Okay, wanted to talk about Hulk Grand Design Monster, the first of the two-issue series by Jim Rugg. I got this from my LCS, Family Attic in Pittsburgh, and Jim did a signing there, so they were nice enough to get me my copy signed by Jim before they sent it to me. So I wanted to see how this book was because I enjoyed X-Men Grand Design by Piscor, and I enjoyed Fantastic Four Grand Design by Tom Scioli, but they were totally different books. Ed had to cram in a lot because the thing about these Grand Design books is, if you know, is that you'll have a story, and then there'll be a story that says, "Oh well, back then this is what happened," and so you're trying just to streamline everything chronologically. And with the X-Men, there was a lot of that. Fantastic Four, there was a ton of that, and where Ed had 6 issues, Tom only had 2. So some of those pages that Tom did were really dense. You're talking 16, 18 panel pages. And I think it's hard to, you have to meet that kind of like break even point where like you want to include everything, but then you don't want to include too much because it's just too much. Like, it's hard to make really dense comics. To find that right mix is really difficult. Like I'm finding that with the Charlier and Mobius Blueberry books, where they're very dense, but they're very well written. So there's a lot there, but it doesn't feel like a slog. But it's not too light either. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at this book. And it has that kind of like aged looking Grand Design feel to it. And then you'll have these ads for like modern Marvel Comics. And this is sort of like when there's a couple pay-per-views that WWE did maybe 15, 16 years ago for ECW, and they were all ECW, and then they would put in an ad for like next month's WWE pay-per-view, and you're like, no, it kind of takes you out of it. But Jim here is showing just real great technical skill, which is he's known for. I mean, I just love this. It's just white with the green to show its gamma and just the silhouette. And this is all you need to represent Banner being caught in the gamma explosion. It's just nice, minimal type of art, a lot of negative space. Here it works real well. And where a lot of the Grand Design books, at least so far with this issue, do everything chronologically, this to me is almost more like a love letter to the Hulk, because it's a summary and a retelling of the Hulk story and the various art styles of when these books were done. Great use of color. It's not too little and it's not too much. To me, this is like that balance of having enough but not too much is really hit well, because there is a ton of history with the Hulk. So it just actually goes through earlier adventures, goes through the introduction of the leader. So these are some storylines I didn't know about because they were way before my time. Some classic heroes. There were reprints when I was a kid in the 70s. That Marvel used to do a lot of reprints, so they used to reprint Tales of Suspense, which was half Hulk and half Namor. So like I actually remember this story where the Silver Surfer was going to cure the Hulk, but then the Hulk woke up and thought he was attacking him, and the Silver Surfer was like, "Hey, look, man, I tried to help you, but you're beyond help," and he just kind of like leaves him. Again, more promos for current work, and it's just kind of like almost jarring because like this is a what if Miles Morales, I guess, is Wolverine kind of thing. It's like, hey, Miles is popular, Wolverine's popular, so we're just gonna combine them both. It's like peanut butter and chocolate. We're just gonna make Reese's, and it'll be even better. It'll be synergy. At least that's probably what they're telling themselves. Now, back to the good stuff. This is a nice summary of all these supervillains, superheroes that the Hulk meets. It has a really good timeline. I like this Doc Samson thing where he's flexing, kind of like doing a Hulk Hogan, Billy Superstar Graham type of pose. Jarella, who I remember Jarella reading stories with Jarella, the Hulk's, great love. And then, the Abomination. And then more promos for stuff I'm not interested in. And then this beautiful ballpoint pen cover. And, you know, that old school 70s style when he had the show thing. And they keep talking about something. This one that Jim mentioned, how they always seem every once in a while to infuse them with more gamma rays to fix them. And it just, all it did was make them more powerful. And it was like, but no, we're going to infuse you. And I love the dropping of this cover here when he fought Machine Man. You got Jimmy Carter, who actually appeared in the comics, you know, which is kind of cool because even though, you know, these things are supposed to be aged, because if he was around in the 70s, it's like that whole thing will hold the chronologically. But I'm glad Jim threw this in because that was a cool moment when you actually have the president saying, hey, look, man, this guy's a threat. And then here you have more of a Sal Buscema type of style, introduction of the She-Hulk. And then you have Wendigo. And you have all these heroes here. Just really interesting, cool stories. This is like a trip down memory lane for me. And then you have it that ends at this point. And then, of course, you go back and all these pages and there's references to what happened and what issues they occurred in. And then the next issue. So if this is not like the previous Grand Designs where it's a... we're going to do everything chronologically that happened, because I know that later on there was a storyline where you found out that Bruce as a young boy was mentally and physically abused by his father, and that caused a lot of the rage issues that Banner has that led to the creation of the Hulk. So that hasn't dropped yet, and I'm not going to sit there and opine on how the whole series is because there is a second issue. But to me, this is like a love letter to the Hulk. I enjoy it. This is nice. This is fun. It's well done. It's not too much. It's not too little. And in my opinion, it's like just right. I'm glad Jim made this book. I'm glad he got be able to print this book. I know it got delayed due to the pandemic. I'm glad he got his crack at it. Jim is immensely talented. He's a good guy. And he just knocked it out, I think. Again, this, and when you read this, and it's funny because when you read this and you remember the stories, and I know there's a little bit of nostalgia, but when you read this and then you're like, X-Force 1 annual, and you're like, again? I'm like, again? Like, because I'm pretty sure there was an annual for X-Force back in the early 90s. It just kind of reminds me of kind of how detached I am from Marvel. And it's not that I'm too good for Marvel, or if you like Marvel, you're stupid. It's just that I've been reading Marvel for over 40 years. I read Marvel, and after a while, when you have characters that don't age, can't die, can't really get married, you're constrained by a lot of IP. Keeping the IP, on brand. After a while, to me, a lot of these stories get boring. A lot of the news stories just are boring. It's like I've been there, I've seen that. This is why I've really got into independence and manga and small press the last 3-4 years, because that's where all the cool, exciting stuff is being done. That's my opinion. But this is a nice love letter to the Hulk. This is a great Hulk book. It's fun. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to the next issue that drops last week of April. Thanks.